recording. I'm going to start lab 6, some little sort of interface, some sort of desktop interface called tkinter, and also a little bit more, some more complicated JSON than what was presented in the previous lecture. But I'll ask if there are any questions first for up here for the recording. No. Okay. So some more JSON. Okay, so in this JSON, the previous JSON that I talked about JSON, it said there are curly brackets, and that means a dictionary, and square brackets, and that means a list. And then we sometimes started with the square bracket, so we started with the list, and other times we started with the curly bracket, so we started off with the dictionary. And what I want to have in this case is sort of what in that previous example was the sort of list of dictionaries. I want that inner dictionary to also have a property that's a list. So sort of a list within a list. Okay. So it's going to be some more complicated JSON than our previous examples. All right, so code, painting JSON list. Let's look at the JSON, then let's look at the other things open. Okay, so here is the JSON. I'm starting with the curly bracket. So I'm starting with a dictionary. And then that dictionary has a property called painters. And I think that's the one and only property. If I do my collapsing trick in Visual Studio Code, that is the one and only property of this object. So I have an object with one property called painters. Okay. Then painters was an array. And it's an array of objects. So here was one object, here was the next object. Or I should say dictionary, sorry, getting my JavaScript language and my Python language mixed up. So this is, so there's an overall object, it has a property painters. Painters is a list. It is a list of dictionaries. That dictionary has some properties like the last name of the artist, the first name of the artist, the country of the artist, the birth date, the death date. And then one of the properties of a painter is paintings. And then paintings is a list of dictionaries. And those little dictionaries that are the painting dictionaries have titles and file names. So there's a list of painters, but then each painter has a property paintings, which is a list of paintings. Sorry, I'm going to close that door most of the way. Sorry. We're under construction. All right, so this is the JSON that we're dealing with, more complicated than the previous JSON because it's a list within a list. So there are dictionaries, there are lists of dictionaries, there are dictionary lists within the list of dictionaries. So it's more complicated JSON. Okay. But it's not outrageous. It's sort of a sensible sort of scenario here. We have multiple painters and they have multiple paintings, and the paintings belong to the painters, so they belong under them. All right. So let's see what this program does. We're importing the JSON. We're going to use JSON parsing. So JSON, the file has all this format, and then you have a JSON module that you import, and you just sort of say, do your JSON thing. That's a JSON file, do your JSON thing. And it gives you all of the structure that was in the file. So we're playing our little OS trick because this was a local JSON file. So I'm just setting up the sort of the terminals, or at least the program's mind, to be in the right place. So then I can read that file. Let me collapse the Explorer. Okay. Open the file, read the file, and here I'm doing it the more succinct way. So the last time, in the previous example, I sort of read the file, then parsed it. And here, it's just all in one. Read the file and do the JSON sort of all as one. So just a faster way. You got to watch these differences of like load versus loads. So it's if you're working with a file, you say load. If you're working with a string, you say loads. The S is string. So this is more succinct, and just notice that difference between load and loads. Okay. So what am I doing here is just some printing out. So it's some nested for loops with some printing. So I'm just, all the information, all the parsing is done. Like if we had a more complicated, if we had a file structure like a CSV or something, it might be our responsibility for doing all the parsing. And then we might have these nested loops for the purposes of parsing. But here, all the parsing's done. JSON.load parentheses F did all the parsing for us. But here, so these loops are not about understanding the structure, but just about sort of spitting it out. Okay, I'm working with a counter. So I want to say, here's my first artist, my second artist, my third artist. So so art is my overall thing. Art is a dictionary, but art painters is a list. So that's something I can loop over. I want to have access to a counter. So I said, I added the word enumerate. So that gives me sort of an automated sort of counting structure. So it's going to have 0, 1, 2, 3. And so I have access to the artist, the element of the array, which I'm calling artist, and I have access to the index 0, 1, 2, 3 as I go on. And I'm just printing out the first name and last name of the artist and my counter. So I'm going to say 1 is, forget who it was, Edward Manet. 2 was George Seurat. So that's what this 22 does. I is looping over the painters, and 22 is printing out the first name and the last name in my counter. Okay. Now I'm coming into the inner loop, and I am looping over the paintings. So there were 2 ways I could have done this. I said art, painters, square bracket I, paintings. So that's one way, is to go out to the entire object art, then get the property painters, then get the ith painter, and then get the paintings of that painter. It's also possible that I could have used artist. So I could have said, instead of saying art painters I, this could have been art painters I could have been artist. Because that's artist is the particular painter in my iteration. And so I have 2 ways of going, from the full-blown object, or from the full-blown dictionary called art, or from this thing that I'm, the element that I'm looping over. So either way I could have done that, but now I want the paintings, and we know that that's a list. And so then we can loop over that list. And so again, I used an enumerate. So I gave myself access to the counter J or an index J, and then the painting. So I have a list of painting objects, and each time I iterate, I'm calling one of those things a painting. I am printing out a tab, so I'm indenting a little bit. I am getting the characters corresponding to 97 plus J. 97 happens to be a little a in ASCII code. So if I say a J will start at 0, so I'm creating a little letter, and it'll be ABC. So the paintings will be labeled with the letters ABC. And here I'm getting, again, I could have said painting title. So this could have been, this whole thing up to here could have been painting. Or I could go out to the whole thing and say art, painters, I, paintings, J, friendly title. So why I was in the mood to write out the long stuff. When I wrote this, I don't know, but I was, but you can, either way would work. So this up here, art, paintings, I could be replaced with just artist, and art, paintings, I, paintings, J could be just this painting. Okay, so that is just some printing out. Now I'm going to try something. Try suggests that it might fail, but I'm going to ask them for the artist's number. Give me artist number 2, and give me painting B. And then I'm going to try to get the file name. I want to show a picture of the painting. And so I had some file names. And so now I'm unwinding what they put in as the number is not quite the index. It's one more than the index, because I showed the user 1, 2, 3, but the real thing behind the scenes is 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's, I'm subtracting a 1. And this ORD painting letter minus 97 is the sort of opposite up here of the 97. So this turns a number into a character, and ORD turns the character into a number, and then A, the first letter, the first possible letter corresponds to a 97. So if I subtracted 97, that would go down to 0. And then I finally want the file name property. Okay, so I made my life hard, and that's me unmaking my life hard, or taking, okay, if I just stuck with numbers and started counting with 0, my life would have been easier, but I don't know. Hard on myself sometimes. Okay, here's me just printing out the file name, and then I'm using a web browser. So that was an import we played with when we did module day. And I have these files located here on my website. And so if I add the file name to this URL, the browser should pop open. But it's a try, because they might enter 57 and I don't have that many artists, or they might say artist number 2, but they might say painting Z. I don't have that many paintings. That's why it's in a try catch, in case they enter some bad information. Then I'm just going to say there was a problem in what you entered. Okay. So there are the artists, Edward Manet. I have paintings A through E, George Seurat, A through F, Henri Rousseau, A, B. Okay, so let's pick one. All right, I'm in the mood for Gustav Klimt, 4, and I'll say B. And there's that painting in a browser. Okay. So more complicated JSON than what we had. So we had two two indices running around because we had a list within a list. So we had the artist had an index and the paintings had an index. And so when we first started in our nested loops, those were I and J. Then I added one to the number I, and I turned J into a letter. And then I had to sort of unwind that. But then again, use the I to get the artist and the J to get the painting, and I can access the information. What are mistakes people often encounter here? People often use the same counter for both loops. That's no good. That's confuses. So I had to have an I for one and a J for the other. I pointed out where I could have made my life easier. Not there, but here. So this, where am I at? Art painters I, that could have been artists. And art painters I, paintings J, that could have been painting. So this code could have been a little less cumbersome. But you can do it the hard way, which I was in the mood to do it the hard way, or you can do it an easier way, because that's when you're looping over an array, that's what that thing is, the element of the array. Any questions on this one? More complicated JSON. Let me show you the lab. Jump ahead and show you the lab. Because this site has some more complicated JSON. So I'm going to have you go to the Nobel Prize API. So it's going to be, instead of giving you a file, I'm going to use an API. You're going to go to the web and read the JSON. I'm going to give you a particular prize, physics, in a particular year, 2000. But you're going to try to make your program such that the user can say what category. Make sure you use small letters. The category should be small p physics, small c chemistry, small p peace, small l literature, and then the year. So, but I wanted to show you the JSON. So put that in there, enter it. Here is the JSON. I'm going to copy this JSON and I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to paste that stuff in there. And I'm going to name this thing save as. I just want to give it a JSON extension. So I'm going to call it Nobel JSON. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I put an underscore instead of a dot. File, I'll just do another save as. Dot JSON, get rid of the dot text. Okay, so now it's JSON, it understands it's JSON. So if I say format it, it gives me some nice alignment here to make it a little bit easier to read. And so it starts with a curly bracket. So it's starting with a dictionary. That's sort of how mine started. It has a property called prizes. Prizes is a list. It's a list of objects. There is a category, there are properties year and category and overall motivation. And then there's a property laureates, which is itself a list. Laureate is who won the prize. And then here are the properties of the laureates. So first name, surname is another name for last name. And so it has a structure an awful lot like the what the painters did. The way we're going to ask for a particular year and a particular prize. And so this prizes is going to have only one thing in it. It's still an array. You have to treat it like an array, but there's only one thing in it. So there's only one thing in it, so you don't necessarily have to loop over it. You can, there's only one thing in it, but you could loop over it and there'd be that one thing in the loop. Or you could just say, I know there's one thing and it has an index of 0. It is a list. There's no way around it. There is a list. So you can forget about the looping, but you can't forget about the fact that it's a list because that's the structure it has. So you'll say prize is 0. You don't have to do a loop. You know there's only one, but it is a list, and so you will have to give it the index of 0 to say I want that first prize. Okay, so that is the structure that so you should be able to learn a lot about the structure that you're going to have to do in lab from the structure that I gave you in the painting example. Okay. So, let me go on to this next example. And this is going to start bringing up this interface idea of tkinter. So we're going to get ultimately in this course, maybe by lab 8. So soon we're about ready. I think there's at least one more lab, maybe 2 more labs before we cut off the material and say we're going to start having a test. And I'll always give you at least a week's notice before a test. But we're getting close to the end of the material for test 1. And starting after test 1 material, we're going to start doing web interfaces. tkinter is an interface, but it's more like a desktop interface. Okay. Did I download it? No, it doesn't look like it. Okay. So there it is, XKCD JSON PY. I want to come over here, close these, open my Explorer. I'm done with painting. I'm looking at XKCD PY. Okay. So there is a comic site, and then they have an API. So they have information about their comics. And the way their API works is if you know the number of the comic, then you can pull up the information about that comic. So tkinter is this new thing, this interface. And so we're importing it, we're bringing the stuff from tkinter in. It's a API that gives us JSON, so we're looking at JSON. It's on the web, so we're doing a URL library request, and I'm going to pop something up in a browser at the end, so I have the browser. I can import as I go. Sometimes I collect them all at the beginning. I'm not really consistent about that. Let me collapse the Explorer. Okay. So here's my URL. And first I'm going to, if I go to 0, that is like the current comic. And I'm going to open the URL and read it and decode it and fix the JSON. This is I told you, I gave you 2 versions of reading a file off the web the other day. One of them was worried more about if the server's trying to block you. This is the easier going. This is a very easygoing site. That's one of the reasons I like it. But you may run into sites which require the other approach. Okay, this is me just printing out all of the information, just spouting it all out. And here's me opening finding under comic info is the JSON. There is a property IMG, and it is so let's look at this JSON. Another API to look at. Okay, and let's look at this. Let's open another file, new, paste that stuff in there and save it as, what I want to save it as, whatever.json. All I really want is it to have the JSON extension so that when I format it, it'll be formatted, it'll understand to format it as JSON. This is a dictionary. The XKCD API gives you a dictionary, no lists. Everything, this is just one comic, end of story. Okay, so the number of the current comic is, so over the years, they put out 2,576. You know, if you come around next week, it may be 77. From this year, it's from this month, so it was the last couple of days. And here is a URL for the actual picture of the comic. And so that's what we are grabbing in our code. Okay. So again, here was the URL we were going to. We went up to the web and read the file. We parsed the file as JSON. We are printing out the information. So we should just see it on the web page. That's it prints to that, not the web page, to the terminal. I'm opening a browser, which is opening up to the image. So a browser should pop up and show me an image of the current comic. I'm finding the number, what it was, 2,576 or something. I'm finding how many of that are, and then I'm saying to the user, the terminal user, enter a number between 1 and that number. And now I'm going up again. So I'm going back to that website. I'm making my second request from that website. And this time I'm concatenating in the number. So when I put the number in, if I don't have a number, it's the most recent comic. If I put a number in, then it's that particular comic. And I'm going to the web and I'm getting the JSON and parsing it as JSON. And I'm printing out, so I'm going to show in the terminal the information about that current comic. And then I'm going to that, I'm opening a browser with that image. And what else? Oh, here's me with a little bit of tkinter, a little bit of interface. I am, TK is this class that makes interfaces. I'm going to have a label with the text, which is the comic info. It's just sort of the JSON information spit out. And I do something that they call pack. And then I am opening up the interface. So there's not much to this interface, but it's just a start to sort of see the simplest thing you need to have this interface. Okay, so we're going to run this program. What are we expecting? We're expecting it to spit out some information about the most recent comic and show it to us in a browser. To ask us to put in a number, then it will spit out the information about that comic and open up a browser. And then this little interface should pop up and show us some information on this interface rather than in the terminal. Okay, so that was fun. All right, so here is the current comic. So it is about Wordle. So you don't know it's recent because that's a new fad. Okay, so that was, we went to the API, we got the information about the recent comic. One of the properties was a URL for the image, and here's the image. All right, so that was the browser opening up. Okay, here in the terminal, come on, why can't I get a hold of that? Now it's a little wider, maybe. There we go. So here is the information that from the API. Now it's saying enter a number between 1 and 2576. So anybody want a number? No, 789. Thanks for your help. All right. So then what did we have here? In the terminal, it spit out the API information. So that was the terminal. It opened another browser with a picture of the image from the URL given in the API. So that was the web browser stuff. And then here is the tkinter interface with just a label that's spitting out that information. And this is a thing separate from our terminal, not a browser, but just this interface. And then, and all I'm doing, I'm not interacting with this interface, it's just a label, but the next thing will do some interacting. Okay. And so close that. Questions. All right, so the next example. Right, next example, the last example is to have a more involved interface that we're making with tkinter. Okay, so it's just a PY. And let's go then open that in Visual Studio Code. And I'm done with scheduler tkinter. There we are. And here's the PY. Okay, let me clear this terminal. Close the Explorer. And I just close scheduler, like the full scheduler. There it is. Okay. So this is going to be all about the interface. Let me run it and then I'll come back. So I have this really crappy looking interface. That's okay. I don't want us to spend time making this interface look nicer because our real goal in this course is a web interface. But here's an interface anyway. And I have a little drop-down list that says I'm choosing a room, 120. I'm choosing a day, Thursday. I'm choosing an hour, 2 o'clock. And then I'm going to reserve the room. Make a reservation. Okay. Now, what else do I want? I want to reserve the room for Tuesday. That's okay. If I go back to Thursday, I already have the room reserved that time. So it just says there's a conflict. But if I change the room, then I can make that reservation. Okay, exciting. All right, so let's see how we made this interface. So we have some labels, which we saw before. We have something that acts that I'm calling a drop-down list, and we have a button. So we're going to make some interfaces with just a few simple things. Okay, so we bring in the tkinter stuff and we start a tkinter object. And up here, we're saying how big it is. So previously I didn't say how big it was, so it got really, really long, but now I'm sort of controlling its size. The root is like the whole thing. And then I'm saying that I'm going to have a top, a middle, and a bottom. So I'm going to have some things in the top, some things in the middle, some things in the bottom. And that's what these frames are, just sort of divisions within my interface. I'm going to have a label, and then I create the label. So this label goes where? It goes in the top frame. What does it say? Schedule a room. And here are my two crappy color choices. And I started off, make it fill the container horizontally, so it goes across the entire thing. And then I make a room label, and it says room, and it's got a different color, and it's also going in the top frame, and it's going to be over there starting on the left. Where is this interface? So I made this first label. That was schedule a room. That was what I called header label. And then I just made room, and there's room. And now I'm making this little option thing here. So I said my room options were this list, H120, H153, H155. I said that the thing that I'm going to get out of that list, so that's my list of options, the thing I'm going to get out of that, I'm going to call room. I'm going to set it to the first option. So when the page comes up, I shouldn't call it a page, when the interface comes up, I will be choosing the first option, which is whole rate 120. And I'm putting that option menu, what I'll call a drop down, on the top frame. I'm going to call the thing I get out of it room, and the options are the room options. So I have what I get out of it, room, what the options are, and where I'm putting it. And then this is me putting it actually onto the interface. The pack means sort of actually add it to the interface. If I were in my JavaScript class, that would be like append child, like actually put it in there, kind of a thing. Making the label for the day. Here are the possible days: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm going to call what I get out of there day. I am going to make the day, the first option day, to be the chosen day. So when I put it all together, it's what I get out of it is day. The options are called day options. And here I am putting it onto the page. And then one more time, hours. Same thing. Here are my possible hours. I'm going to call what I get out of it hour. So here's what I get out of it. Here are the options. Here is the where I'm putting it in the top frame. And so that produced up to here. I had the overall label that spanned the whole thing at the top. And then I had room and the options, and day and the options, and hour and the options. I make a list, an empty list called reservations. That's for me to code later. I'm defining a function. I'm going to, I want the function defined before I call it. We've talked about that before. So it looks like I'm getting ahead of myself, but when I'm going to have a button. When I press that button, I'm going to call the function reserve, and it likes to have the function defined before it's called. So that's why here's my definition of reserve. I'm going to get the room, get the day, and get the hour from the interface. And I concatenate them together. And then I say, if that concatenated thing is in my list of reservations, that's when I say there's a conflict. If it's not in there, I say that the reservation was accepted, and I add to my list of reservations that concatenated thing. And I also have a reservation label where I'm displaying the whole list of reservations. So let me pick whole ride 155 and Mondays and 11 and make a reservation. And it said the reservation was accepted, and here it is in the list. So this is the join thing. So I have reservations. I made a concatenated thing. I added the reservations to it, and then I'm displaying all the reservations. Okay. Here's me making a button that says make reservation. I put it in the middle frame and I packed it in there. I added it to the interface. I have a header called the reserve header, which I'm putting on the bottom, and that just says, just gives a label called reservations. Then I have something I called reserve action, and that's going to say accepted or there was a conflict. And then finally, there'll be a reservation label. So there's a header that's just a word. There's my action that says accepted or rejected. And then there is the actual list of reservations. And then this main loop thing, without this main loop thing, that's sort of like an on-purpose infinite loop that keeps the interface showing until the user interacts. So this, like nothing happens without this, or the interface will pop up and go right back down. This is like a sort of a forced infinite loop that is only ended by you closing the interface. So without that, I think it pops up and right back down, and the user doesn't have a chance to interact with it. But you throw in this on-purpose infinite loop, and it keeps it up there so that the user can interact. Okay, so I think that was my last example, and we talked a little bit about what you have to do, but let's talk more about what you have to do. Let's make this bigger and make it wider. Maybe not quite that big. Okay. So I showed you this JSON. Then it gave you one thing, so there were no lists. No, sorry. This is the Nobel Prize. There are two lists, but the first list has only one thing, one prize, because we asked for a given year and a given category. Okay. So we're going to make an interface, then allows them to choose the subject, the category for the prize. Physics, chemistry, peace, literature, economics, maybe that's it. Small letters. Warning you now, use small letters. So you get to choose a year, and let's just keep it easy and go, recent years. It goes back to like, Albert Einstein, even before. We're going to keep it easy. Just give me a few years, a few choices of years. You can use a range to generate a list of years, or you can just type out some years, however you want to do it. But so make a little interface. Mine had 3 things they could choose. Yours has 2, a list of categories, a list of years. Then when they press their button, you're going to find their category and find their year, and you're going to concatenate back together this string. So it won't always say physics, it won't always say 2000, it'll be whatever they choose. Then you'll go to the interface. So you're going to the API is in the button function. I have people trying to go to the API before they know the category and the year. That won't work. You want to go to the API after you know what the user wants in terms of category and year. Then you can go to the API. So the API call is in the function that is called by the button. So you go, you pick up, they click the button, you pick up the category, you pick up the year, you throw together this string, you get the API information back, you parse it as JSON. It has that structure where it has a list within a list, but the first list, there's only, because we chose a category and we chose a year, the first list has only one thing in it. Prizes list has only one thing in it. You can loop over it if you want, or you can just go straight to saying, I know that there's only one and use the index 0. And then you must loop over what they call the laureates and show me their names. If you just give me their last names or their first names, I'll say good enough, you know what you're doing. So that's what you have to do. Any questions? Okay. So I will stop recording.